In this class, we're going to talk about the future of work, the way we live, how we spend our time, and how technology is going to make major changes in work and our time allocation and our way of life. After all, we've seen in our study of the 7 ages of globalization that each age, paced by changes of technology, have led to rather fundamental changes in how we do spend our time at work or in study or in retirement or in leisure or other activities. These technological changes across the 7 ages of globalization have changed how we live, whether it is as nomadic bands in the Paleolithic age, or whether it is urban denizens in our 7th age, the digital age, when well over half the world's population, for the first time in human history, lives in cities, and the proportion of humanity living in cities will continue to rise from around 55% today to 70% or more by the middle of the century. So as technology has changed, so too has the world of work and the nature of our time allocation, how we spend our days and how we spend our lives indeed, and how we organize human settlements themselves, from hunting and gathering to a hyper-urbanized global society. This is a complicated subject, and it has many different components. We have to start with the dynamics of population itself, because as we know, each of the ages of globalization has had an underlying pattern of demographic change, that is the size of the population and the age structure of the population, that has been one of the drivers of change of work and the allocation of our time within the day and over our lifetimes. Well, once again, our digital age, our 7th age of globalization, is an age of significant demographic change. The 6th age of globalization, the industrial age, was a startling age of demographic change because industrialization, as it accelerated in the early years of the 19th century, gave rise to tremendous increases of productivity, including in the production of food itself, and therefore in the capacity to feed a growing population, and in the survival of infants and young children as nutrition increased, but also as knowledge of public health, the importance of clean water, or the role of vaccination, or the discovery later on of antibiotics, ended a lot of the deaths from pathogens that had kept populations smaller in the past. So in the 6th age of globalization, there was a massive increase of population. At the start of the industrial age, around 1800, the world population was around 900 million or 1 billion people, depending on whose estimate one tracks. And as of today, of course, we are nearly 10 times higher at 8 billion people, with the population of the world still rising by around 80 million every year. Now, as mortality rates came down, especially the deaths of infants and young children, so survival went up, so too did fertility rates. As children survived, households chose to space the children and to reduce the number of children in the families, albeit typically with a lag, with fertility rates coming down after mortality rates had come down, and therefore after a period of rapid population increase. And with the advent of new technologies for contraception to prevent fertilization and births, to reduce the fertility rates, this pattern of reduced fertility in the 20th century spread around the world. So the 19th and 20th centuries were periods of very rapid population growth, but especially in the 20th century with a decline of fertility rates over time. And in fact, fertility rates in the more advanced economies reaching the replacement rate, that is around 2 children per couple, or even falling below the replacement rate. That is a total fertility rate or total number of children statistically for a typical woman in the society below 2. And that means that over time, after a phase of rapid population growth, there came a phase in which population growth slowed, in some places where it has already stopped, and where population is now gradually declining because the 2 adults are having on average fewer than 2 children to replace them in the next generation. And what one sees in these graphs is the fact that fertility rates have declined significantly in the course of the 20th century until now, and have reached replacement rates or close to replacement rates in most of the world. There's one region of the world where total fertility rates remain far above the replacement level. That is Africa. And in Africa, the fertility is still around 4 children per woman, meaning that, roughly speaking, each mother is having 2 daughters in the next generation. And this means that the African population is still rising rapidly and still on a tendency to double and to continue to increase even beyond that. But for most of the other regions of the world, the total fertility rate has now reached the replacement rate or below, meaning that most of the world is on a path of stabilization of population followed by a period of gradual decline. And this will change markedly the proportions of the total world population in different regions of the world. And of course, most notably, it will be Africa that has a significant rise of its share of the world population, whereas most of the other regions of the world will see a decline in that region's share of the world population. Now, if we look broadly at 3 different groupings of the world population, the so-called Western world, which for my purposes I'm defining as the Americas plus Europe, Africa, and Asia, so grouping the world into 3 different proportions, we can expect quite a significant change of the world's overall allocation of population across these regions. Typically, Asia has been the place with the majority of the world population, reaching around 65% or 2/3 of the world population as of the mid-20th century. But that share of the world population in Asia is now gradually declining because fertility rates in most of Asia have already come down to the replacement rate of near 2 or even below. The European and America's share, the so-called Western world, if we use that term, will also tend to decline gradually because fertility rates are also typically now at or below replacement levels in those regions. In Africa, we're going to see a significant increase of the share of world population. Today, Africa has about 1.4 billion people, about the same size as China and India, and that means around 18% of the world population. But by mid-century, by 2050, Africa's population will probably be around 2.5 billion people, a significant increase from today, and around 25 to 30% of the overall world population. And while it's very hard to project fertility rates as they will be in 30 or 40 or 50 years, on the scenario that the United Nations uses to extrapolate current trends, which might change, Africa's population share of the world could reach as much as 35 or even 40% of the world population by 2100. So this is the first point when we ask, who will we be? How will we live? Where will we live in the future? The changes of demographics will mean a rising share of the world population living in Africa, a stabilization or even gradual decline of the total population in other regions of the world. Now, as these fertility rates come down to replacement or below replacement so that there are fewer and fewer children per adult, it also means that the average age of the population rises. When you combine the low fertility rate with the longer life expectancies because of improved public health measures and we hope improved nutrition, that combination means a significant aging of the population structure as well. As the population ages and there's a higher proportion of older people in the population, that will also change how our economy functions. More of the economy will be devoted to the care of older people. That is the so-called care economy, and we'll turn our attention to the care economy later in this class.